This mutation is called hostile territory, and if the infested were not hostile on Dead of Night, they certainly are right now. We have 3 mutators active, we have Barrier, we have Photon Overload, and we have Power Overwhelming. And yes, every single unit over here will be able to cast abilities, including the infested, so this mutation is going to be a whole bundle of joy. We can see that we are playing with Raynor and Artanis, and Artanis already has a probe that is moved over here, and we'll see what the strategy that's going to be used to deal with this mutation is. Let's quickly have a look at the masteries over here. Mastery-wise, we have the research cost reduction here for Raynor, the Banshee cooldown, and the mech attack speed. So we're expecting a mech kind of build and a rush into the higher tech units and higher upgrades as quickly as possible for Raynor. And then for Artanis, we have the shield overcharge Guardian Shell. There's a little bit of a split over there, the energy regeneration, and then the Chrono Boost and the Spear of Dune energy. I think maybe the initial energy was so that he could sneak his probe in here. I'm not sure what the strategy is over here, but we will see what the plan is. Here we already see a little bit of a warp in here, and Barrier does give the units a lot of sustainability, so it does make it a little bit more difficult for our players to push into these enemy bases. Overall, yeah, the game seems to be going okay. Production-wise, we can see that Artanis has already put down his Robo. The Robo is kind of okay if you want to do this mission. I generally do a kind of a mix. So I go for Dragoons and Zealots, and then I do a few Immortals as well. So you have your Zealots in the front, tanking for the Immortals and the Dragoons. Dragoons attacking from long range, and then the Immortals attacking from the short range. Just do note that the Immortals are not really very effective against these structures. These structures do not take bonus damage from the Immortals. The Immortals are very, very reasonably tanky, and it does make it does give a little bit more sustainability to your army, so to speak. Raynor is just going for the standard build here. He already has his factory out, so it's pretty much expected that he will be doing a mech-centric build, and we have a few Marines here as well to sit inside this bunker. Now, the one thing that can happen is that the units can actually disable that bunker. You can see how much that barrier actually affects the infested life. The barrier actually absorbs a significant amount of shield over here, and there's a Photon overcharge now from the point defense drone that was dropped from the power overwhelming mutator, which is also one of the annoying things. So an infested unit can drop a defensive drone, and that in itself can have problems, but that defensive drone gets the Photon overcharge or the overload ability, so it does make it a little bit difficult. And as you can see over here, this is the other thing I was talking about, the bunkers can be disabled by these spotters, and also by the infested units, which also have now a chance of having that ability. A little bit of a yoink on that Zealot, and that Zealot now is, he has found himself in the presence of enemies, which he's probably not too happy about, but you can see this bunker just keeps getting disabled and reduces the overall DPS of the player's defenses here. There is a Reaver that has come out for Artanis. Personally, I'm not really much of a fan of Reavers on this mission. Reavers don't have the kind of sustain that it would be required to be able to hold the infested. It is useful once in a while. Very nice overcharge. Very nice solar bombardment that's come over there. That is the gather point for the infested. So you'll actually end up taking out a lot of these infested units with that solar bombardment. A little bit unfortunate that he would have to use it, but it is an emergency situation. They were somewhat getting overwhelmed here, and I think that was a good choice there. But yeah, the Reavers, on the other hand, I'm not really much of a fan of. They don't really, they don't have the sustain that would be necessary for. Very nice pullback there, but unfortunately gets pulled back into the Seeker missile there. They don't have the sustain that is necessary to hold on this mission, especially on the Mutator. One of the other issues, and you'll see this problem happening right now, is that these guys are projectile. They have projectile attacks, which means they will actually have an overkill, so to speak, on these units. It's not much of a problem on this one because there is barrier and the chances of overkill are kind of significantly lowered. But if you're playing on a normal infested mission, these Reavers are actually going to one-shot these infested units, and what's going to happen is 4 Reavers are going to fire at the same infested unit, and you end up wasting 3 Scarabs. And over here, we already have the upgrade as well for the Reavers that gives them the extra charges, which is reasonably good. But again, there is a lot of skill casting that is going on over here, and Raynor has just started to fortify this position with the siege tanks. It is going to cause a little bit of a problem that they have spotters in the first infested wave, but as long as they have sufficient anti-air, it should not be much of a problem. Now, what kind of anti-air? Like for Raynor, I would say the bunkers would be fine. It does draw aggro of these spotters, which does kind of get annoying a little bit, but you can see over here some of the siege tanks getting lifted. Has anything been lost? We have 6 zealots and 1 SCV that has been lost in 1 probe. That's actually reasonably decent, so overall, I think the players are doing okay here. You have this hybrid just evaporates with the number of reavers that are there on this side. But you can see over there, you don't need that many scarabs to take out one of these buildings. And you take a look at that broodling. That is the overkill I was talking about, and that is what drains the reaver abilities a lot. So if they end up focus firing down one unit, you end up wasting a few scarabs over there. You see another 2 scarabs have gone waste there. And it might not be a big deal now when they're not really required for sustain, but at some point they will need to be able to hold against a slew of infested, and that is going to cause a lot of problems for these reavers over here. Much better choice would be just going for the dragoons and the immortals, and a few zealots as well. Just soak up the damage, get the charge ability, get the whirlwind ability on the zealots, and they work relatively well here. But we will see how the players choose to take this thing in. We have a shield overcharge that goes up now for these units, and one thing that I have noticed is they are pushing together. I think that is decent for the early stage of the game, because you really do not want to end up losing your army. Like losing this army for Raynor would be absolutely devastating. So just sticking together, even though they are taking a while to clear, making sure they do not end up losing anything is going to be very, very beneficial for them. There is a lurker and a swarm host that are hiding underground, but they get detected out, and that ends up being cleared through Raynor's scan. That siege tank is getting focus fired down, tries to move out of the way. Does he get saved? Oh, he does get saved by Artanis' Guardian Shell. Artanis is very, very useful. Like, his passive is extremely useful on a lot of mutations where you need to have that sustain. There's a black hole that ends up going down here on some of these units. But having that sustain is going to help to keep these units alive. One of these siege tanks goes down, another one ends up going down, and the third one gets saved by the Guardian Shell. But that Mutalisk is on the hunt right now. It wants there, and it has cast another black hole on Raynor's army, but does not seem to be interested in taking that out.
Forces are under attack.
A few more of these siege tanks do end up going down to the aberration though, which is somewhat unfortunate. Overall, Raynor has lost a total of 7 siege tanks, which kind of stinks, and 3 of these vultures here. And this mission is not going to get any easier. It is going to get significantly harder. Reaver-wise, I think 2 Reavers, 2 Immortals have gone down. 11 Zealots. Zealots are fine. They're there to actually soak up this damage. This is what causes the problem for the Dragoons. Because the Dragoons are projectile attacks, they do get intercepted by... There is a black hole over there. It would be very, very unfortunate if there was a secret missile that gets dropped onto this army, but fortunately for the commanders, that does not happen. There's another Time Warp that ends up going down, and this is why Power Overwhelming is a very, very nasty mutator. This side is about to get breached, and there is going to be a ton of aberrations that will be leaking through, and it might get a little bit nasty. We have a bunch of Spire Mines on this side, so this might actually help a little bit to clear out some of these units here. But now we have a Choker on here, and it catches a bunch of these Vultures, and surprisingly, these Vultures actually survive. I thought they were goners there. On this side, I think they're holding relatively well. The Siege Tanks are doing reasonably well. Secret Missile comes down to that Dragoon. That Dragoon does not get pulled back, and it does end up hitting a large number of the units on this side. On here, that Choker is still causing a little bit of a problem, but... I think the Spire Mines might get activated in time to end up saving this. Nope, they end up focus firing this down. And there'll be a lot of problems on this side. Over here, this area has actually been wiped by the Infested. There are a large number of Infested units here. Emergency Orbital Strike comes down onto that one Choker. Unfortunately, Artanis' Orbital Strike is not as good as Karax's Orbital Strike. Banshee Airstrike also comes down here, and now there's another wave of Infested that's making its way here. This is one of the pushes on the mission. And there is a Hyperion that comes down. That Hyperion despawns, and another black hole ends up coming down onto this army, but I think these Spire Mines are going to get activated as soon as black hole ends and should end up wiping this side out. Over here, I think Raynor is doing okay on the defensive part. These Spire Mines are actually doing they're worth their weight in gold at the moment. On here, a bunch of siege tanks as well are able to hold, and I think the players have survived for this night. But on the next night, you're going to get your boss infested, and you're also going to get a very, very nasty four-pronged attack here from the infested. So it should be in the player's best interest to try and clear the site as quickly as possible. What you can do, and this is not really a guaranteed thing, but the infested spawn from the infested structures on the map. So for the most part. So what you can actually do is if you clear out one side, you will reduce the amount of pressure that you are facing on, for example, this side now. So these players now, they've cleared out from the 8 o'clock position all the way to the 10 o'clock position. If they were to complete the sweep up to the 12 o'clock position, then this side will actually face less pressure from the infested than it would normally have, like as compared to maybe a side like this, which has not been cleared. So that is something that you can take into consideration when you are playing this mission and you are trying to figure out where you want to put your defenses. We have a bunch of mules that have come down here to try and help repair these siege tanks, but I don't know if that's going to be sufficient. There are a lot of nasty units over here, and there's a Viper over here, and the second it sees those siege tanks, because the siege tanks are actually out of range, Secret Missile on that siege tank, Secret Missile hits that siege tank, saved because the Viper pulls it away, and the Viper actually was the MVP over there, ends up pulling that siege tank and saving the other siege tanks from potential demise. So that is actually really good there, for Raynor at least. For Amon, I would say, please look at your targeting system and figure out what you want to target. There is a little bit of harass here on the side from that hybrid behemoth, but that ends up going down here. There is... Oh, that's interesting. Even the Spire Mines get a shield overcharge, which is kind of funny. But yeah, but the players are going to be doing okay on this side. This side will essentially be cleared out, and Raynor is pushing here to try and clear that side. There's another yoink on one of those siege tanks. There is a point defense drone, which is again wreaking a lot of havoc there, and another yoink on one of these siege tanks. So the funny thing is these pulls are actually helping Raynor out because he's moving his siege tank line forward without him having to unsiege. But there was a lot of damage that has been caused. So far, Raynor has lost 17 siege tanks and 24 of these vultures. 4 marines, those ones were probably inside the bunkers. And now it is night number 3, and it is going to be a 4-pronged attack. So one thing I might not be able to do, but if you are watching this replay and watching this cast, pay attention and see how a few of the how much less infested will actually spawn on this side as opposed to this side. Now, the one thing about this mission is you have the random spawn of infested, but you also have an organized attack wave, so they will end up sitting at a gather point on maybe around here, and then they'll push in one wave. So there are 2 things to pay attention to. Usually the random spawn will be reduced, but the standard push will be very normal. So you should see large pulses of infested, but the random trickle that ends up spawning, see there's the gather over there, but the random trickle of infested should be highly reduced on this side as opposed to that side, and I'll try and show you guys that. But I'm actually trying to pay attention as well to see how the players are defending on this side. Bunch of siege tanks on the high ground here shelling down, and these siege tanks are actually doing really, really well. Unfortunately, there is an overseer over there, and it is causing some problems because it is casting random abilities on these SCVs, which is very unfortunate. So it has cast Time Warp, and I think it cast a Secret Missile as well on these SCVs, and this thing is not done yet. It's casting its Guardian Shell, I'm not sure why, but that is actually very fortunate for Raynor. On this side, as you can see, there's a large number of infested that has been spawned on here. On here, there's a Hyperion that's holding this side, and Artanis has also put down a few cannons with some Dragoons here just to try and hold against these Spires. These Spires can cause a lot of problems as well. They will start attacking your refineries, and because they have power overwhelming as well, they may even cast Secret Missiles on your units. And this is probably the last thing these players wanted to see. There is a stank that is coming up now. The Night Swarm is probably the better one to deal with because, you know, power overwhelming, you want to have fewer stuff that is tanky, but there is a Hyperion now in position, but I think the Hyperion might despawn before it actually gets its Yamato cannon off here, and now that tank is going to cause a lot of runs. There are a bunch of Reavers on this side. Very nice positioning here on the Reavers. He's put the Reavers up on that high ground there, which is inaccessible, which is really good. They're good defensively, and I think for the tank might have been a good choice, but it means that these Reavers will be out of commission during the daytime, which may not be too bad, as long as you want to just purely have them as defensive units. But on this mutation, the one thing you need to consider is using your resources as effectively as possible. You know, you want to have your army out and all pushing out in the mission before during the daytime, before the infested spawns start to overwhelm you, because it does end up getting pretty nasty at some point. All these turrets have been disabled by these spotters, and a huge whiff on the orbital strikes for Artanis. I don't think those orbital strikes were necessary, but the infested have been burned off now, and now there is an attack wave that's coming up for Amon, and I don't know if there's any anti-air. I think the one thing the commanders are lacking over here is sufficient anti-air, and these overlords will, I think, end up dropping, and they actually casted their Guardian Shell there, keeping them alive, but there we go. There is a bunch of lurkers on this side, and that is not very good. These lurkers are going to eat up these siege, these cannons like no one's business. But both Artanis and Raynor are pushing now here to try and clear how many ever structures they can. I don't think this area has been touched yet, so there's going to be a lot of nasty stuff on that side, which will have to be addressed. These lurkers are causing a lot of havoc here now. I think we only have a few more stuff, and it gets cleared up there. There is one Photon overcharge point defense drone now. The final troll face from Amon, and yeah, this side has been cleared up. And now this is the more difficult part. I think there was maybe a solar bombardment? No solar bombardment, I think, on this side. Might have gone down a little bit earlier because there seems to be a significantly lower number of units on this side. But Raynor is starting to push in with his siege tanks. His siege tanks are just shelling all the units over here. Unfortunately, no anti-air for Raynor, so these Mutalisks are going to go uncontested unless Raynor has something to help him, which does not seem to be the case. Mutalisks are just casting all sorts of abilities on these units here because these are all clumped up. And Amon will be more than happy to cast black holes and secret missiles on you while you are doing that. Over here, Artanis is pushing in. This area is relatively undefended. I don't think there are no defenders on this side, but that's basically it for the easy part of this area of the map, because on either side they are actually heavily defended fortifications. Raynor has ended up clearing up the site, and now he's going to start pushing up here with a little bit of backup from Artanis' Dragoons here, which, as you can see, Artanis going Dragoons here is, I think, slightly better than the Reavers. The Reavers don't really have the kind of sustain that would be necessary for dealing with this mission. So I like the fact that Artanis has actually switched over to Dragoons rather than staying with the Reavers, because the Reavers are also expensive and they tend to get focus fired down, and when you lose a Dragoon, it actually feels really, really bad. There is a Lurker here that is poking away at some of these units, and a Mule here to try and repair some of these units, and there is a Yoink on that Vulture, but that Vulture just speeds away and decides to get out of there before its career as a Vulture gets ended. So this game has been an absolute slugfest right now, but the commanders are slowly poking through and clearing the side. So they have a little bit of they have this little island over here, and then they have the whole southern sweep here from maybe the 5 o'clock position to the 7 o'clock position, and they will be done. It will be a while. There is going to be, again, I think there might be 2 stanks on this night. I can't remember how many stanks will spawn, but that is definitely going to give the commanders a little bit of a problem. There's a solar bombardment and a secret missile that ends up getting target on one of these Dragoons. There's no split away on the Dragoons over there, and now the first tank has spawned on this side, and but notice the difference in the spawns over here. It is significantly less. You have significantly less of a trickle spawn than you do over on this side, for example. And that was the point I was making earlier about clearing the structures to reduce the random spawn of infested from that side. That tank does end up going down relatively well handled on both the commander's parts. You know, the Banshee airstrike does help, Deal some damage to the infested that are also surrounding that stank. And over here, I think Raynor's vultures are kind of able to hold relatively well. Raynor is flowing a lot of minerals, which might seem like a bad thing, but when you are going for mass vulture, it is surprising how fast you can eat up your minerals without you even noticing. These vultures, putting down spider mines just takes up so many resources, and if you're not paying attention, you can actually end up being mineral starved without in no time, basically. Again, these spotters are giving a lot of help to these siege tanks because there are only 2-3 missile turrets on here. Nice orbital strikes there on Artanis' part. Does end up taking out these spotters, and a black hole comes down from one of that spotter to try and troll the players over here. And you can see there's a gather point over here, and there are a ton of units that will be pushing towards the side. And now the next tank has spawned. Is there going to be a Yamato cannon on that stank? Hyperion just seems to be focusing on DPSing this down. There are a ton of siege tanks, and the vultures, spider mines are the things that actually dealt a lot of damage to that stank. And now there is an airdrop from Amon that has essentially taken over that whole top side. Nice scan on Raynor's part, so his siege tanks on the low ground can actually hit the units on the high ground over there. A ton of lurkers on this side, but these lurkers actually are not going to be cleared. Mule's trying to repair each other. But there we go. The Banshee airstrike is going to be coming in to end up clearing out this side. Good use of the airstrike. You know, you've finished. You've used it for defending. And I think there is a spotter on that side. I think that's a spotter that is just trolling. Oh no, it's a point defense drone. One of the things that can happen actually is that the point defense drones that are dropped by attack waves are still considered attack waves on the minimap. So sometimes you'll see the attack wave marker and you might panic and you're like, oh my god, there's an attack wave coming up near my base, and then you realize it's just 1 point defense drone and that you have been trolled by Amon. Very nice black hole there on Amon's part. Unfortunately, nothing else to combo with that black hole, keeping these units alive. So that's somewhat unfortunate. I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more carnage on this side. It has happened to me several times where I would get Black Hole and Yamato Cannon, or Black Hole Seeker Missile, or Black Hole Irradiated, and it is a very, very nasty combo. That Viper is just laughing at these siege tanks right there, just looking around, gives a little yoink there, just to annoy these siege tanks on this side. The fungal comes down on these siege tanks, and these siege tanks are making a push through. There is a Seeker Missile that comes down on that siege tank. I don't think Raynor... Oh, nice split there on Raynor's part. And now these siege tanks are all going to siege up, and I think there's going to be a scan on the top side, and Raynor is just going to shell from the low ground, shredding pretty much every single thing on this side. Artanis is on this side as well, pushing in. Now it's a two-pronged attack, which is good because both the players are now at a point where they can solo push this side. One of the only things that can cause a little bit of problems is the hybrids that have gathered on this side. But as you can see, Artanis has already cast a solar bombardment here just to clean out this area. This is a hybrid gather point, and during the early stages of the game of this mission, you might only get hybrid destroyers and, you know, maybe a hybrid nemesis, but on the later stages of the game you'll get hybrid dominators, and those things are not fun to deal with. They will cast, and they will skill cast you, and you might end up losing your army. So solar bombardment there is absolutely the right thing to do. Another bunch of siege tanks have is there a split there on the siege tanks? No, not yet. A bunch of mules here that are there to keep the siege tanks alive. It's a very creative play from Raynor's part, and a Guardian, a shield overcharge comes down here to try and keep Artanis' army alive. I do not know if pushing in at this point is a good idea during the nighttime. And the reason why I say that is because power overwhelming makes this mission very, very unpredictable. You could get Black Hole and Seeker Missile, and you would end up losing your entire army, and you will end up losing the game. But I believe the players are not interested in defending. But notice the size of the trickle spawn over here. There's pretty much nothing that is attacking this base, and very, very little is attacking on this side. And this is how you can actually ration out your defenses. If you have cleared out a side, you can put down less defenses there because the random spawn will obviously be reduced because there are no infested structures on the side. Another bunch of siege tanks have come up here, and They're going to start shelling on this side again, just to see the large number of infested that are spawning. Raynor is going to take a while to have to cut through this. I mean, now we have a Hyperion that's coming up here, and there's, I think, just a focus fire down on these structures. Is there a focus fire down? No, there's no focus fire down on this. And now we have a stank here, and a stank here, and a lot of spars here, and there are a bunch of chokers on this side. There are very, very few structures left, and Raynor, and I think Raynor is Artanis actually going to try? No, Artanis has actually moved back to try and defend this side, and that stank has basically eaten up all of Artanis' probes. And the aberrations have eaten up all of Raynor's SCVs on this side. So this is going to be a complete slugfest. And we have two structures on this side that have been missed by Raynor. And Raynor is not in position to try and deal with this. Raynor has sieged up his siege tanks over here. Yeah, like Raynor has lost 87, 89, 90 vultures, 91 vultures, and 46 siege tanks over here. This game is an absolute slugfest right now. There is one more infested structure on this side. Has this area been cleared? Yes. So that is the last one, I think. That is the last structure there that Raynor has missed. Those siege tanks are not going to make it, unfortunately, because I'm pretty sure the Guardian Shell is over. 1 goes down, 2 goes down, 3 goes down, and that is the last one. There is a ping on that side for both these players, and now there is a lot of infested units that have come up on this side, and this might be Artanis' last structure on that side. And that was it. I'm not actually sure what was taken out, but that was it. There were like almost no structures left, but they do end up saving the game, and that is GG. So I'm going to do something I don't normally do during a cast, and I kind of want to rewind to see how that infested colonists campaign was taken out. I normally would not do this. That would usually be the end of the game, but I'm very, very curious to see how the players took it out. So I'm just going to restart from like 20 seconds before the game ended, and we're going to see what it is. That is the infested colonist compound that is remaining on this map, and I'm just going to start the playing, and we're going to see what they're going to do over here. So there are a bunch of Dragoons here. Oh, there's a Banshee airstrike that ends up coming down, and an Orbital Strike that just gets spammed on this thing. Okay, so that is how they were able to clear that out. And there we go. That is it.